Presented by CBS All Access.
It's us. It's me. I was dancing to the countdown of when we were live, and then I got caught. What's up, everyone? Welcome to NG Plus today. I'm Sydney Goodman, and joining me today is Janet Garcia.
What's up?
Josh Dew.
Hi.
And Tom Marks.
Hello.
Hello. Hello, everyone. Yesterday we were talking about Xbox buying Bethesda, which is still kind of wild to say out loud. And today we're talking about how it was really hard to buy an Xbox Series X today and a Series S. And actually the pre-orders seemingly crashed retailer websites. Womp, womp, womp. Which brings me to a lot of other questions that I'm going to ask later, but to give you all the deets, pre-orders went live at 8 a.m. Pacific this morning, and almost every major U.S. digital retailer, including Microsoft's own site, had issues. So we have this data anecdotally because we had this cute little Slack thread of everyone, of all the chaos and everyone giving each other tips at IGN. But IGN's sister site, Down Detector, reported that Best Buy had significant problems. Amazon had problems, and it wasn't really clear if they were supposed to go live late or if there were loading errors. Target had issues, GameStop had issues, and Microsoft had issues. However, Walmart didn't appear to have issues, at least not when I typed out this run of show and the last time I checked the article. So, Janet, I know I saw you in the Slack thread. Tom, Josh, did anybody try to get Xboxes today?
I did not.
You
didn't even try?
High
What?
five, no.
I didn't try. I didn't try for PS5 pre-orders either, though. That's
I kind of respect that. There's personally, I don't feel that there's much of a reason to be in a hurry at this point. But Janet, give us your pre-order story or stories.
Yeah.
But wait, sorry. Before Janet starts, I just want to context this with, for IGN, we need a certain number of consoles so that all of us can do our job, and because we're work from home, the need is higher than you would think. So if Janet or myself talks about getting more than one Xbox console, we're not just greedy little boogers. We actually were asked to. So continue, Janet.
Yeah. I did end up just getting the one because I admittedly was like, everyone else can get the other ones. And also the one I got was just for myself. So I didn't help out anybody, but I did help myself to an Xbox Series X, and it was extremely hard to do so. This didn't really come as a surprise to me, honestly, because any of these releases are always hard to get. This is always the case for a console. I don't know any console that's easy to get. Honestly, when it's too easy to get, I get a little suspicious. Like, why could I just get this? Is no one else here? Like I don't remember what the Wii U situation was, but it's usually very challenging, and this was no different. The time kind of helped in the sense that you knew when to do the work of shopping around, but at the same time, that's also now everyone else also knows. Like, everyone who wants this is doing the same thing you're doing. So even though it was kind of more organized than the PlayStation rollout in that sense, it was harder because you had to just like break through the barrier. It's not like you could just slip in and be like, oh, I happen to be online when they dropped, and now I just have my PS5. It was a lot of troubleshooting for me. Walmart was open immediately, but I just couldn't check out. It just would not let me check out. And then once it did, it said that it was sold out. And I was like, okay, I wasted my time in this tab. And I just kind of went back and forth to all these different tabs. Poor GameStop. I really feel for GameStop here. I know everyone loves to bash GameStop, but I love physical media, so I go to GameStop a lot still. But geez, that site is just trash. It's like the worst website that I've ever seen. Someone made that website like a decade ago and was like, we're done here. We don't need to come back and update it. I'm probably still in line on the GameStop website, to be honest. If I didn't close the tab, I would still be in line for that. So after a lot of trying and failing, eventually when Amazon went up, I was able to get a pre-order through there, but that was like kind of delayed. I never even stuck around to see what Best Buy was doing. That would have been my number one pick because I like doing in-store pickup, though it didn't seem like a lot of stores were offering in-store pickup for the Series X for some reason. So yeah, that's basically how it went down. It was a nice relief to get it done, and now I have next gen. And do I need it? No, but do I want it? Absolutely. It's just exciting to get something when it first comes out, but it's a horrible investment because they're always broken or the catching fire or something. But like, I'm gonna be there when it explodes, and I'm so excited.
I appreciate your tenacity for exploding consoles. I actually got one of mine at Walmart and the other at Microsoft. I got one for my dad because his didn't. I wasn't planning on giving it to my dad. I was going to give it to the office, but he didn't end up getting through, and so he's taking one of mine. And then Walmart was pretty easy-ish. That was the first one that I got through, and then I tried to do all the others. And I heard that Amazon, it seemed like, because to your point, as far as like, did it make it more difficult for people knowing the time that it was dropping or less difficult? Amazon was the website that didn't go live. I feel like it was later, like probably around 8:45-ish. It was definitely later in the hour. And as soon as somebody sent the link, was like, Amazon's up, it was super easy to get through. So I don't know. Who's to say? I benefited from the element of surprise with PS5, so I'm not upset, but I'm sure if I didn't benefit from it, I'd be very upset. So Tom and Josh, neither of you wanted to participate in the chaos, which I commend you for not being sucked into the adrenaline, because that definitely is what sucked me in. What is it? What has it been like watching from the outside? Just everyone kind of like, does it seem that chaotic or that big of a deal, or are you just kind of like, whatever, it's another day?
This one seemed calmer from the outside. Like I think to Janet, you mentioned this. Like you're totally right, right? Like every console pre-order moment, every console launch is chaotic like this, right? Like there always isn't enough stock. It's always a mess. But I think the difference with between PlayStation 5 and what Xbox did this morning was that the PS5 one, there was just a ton of confusion because nobody really knew which site was live or if it was supposed to be going live. Sony had literally just said it's going to go live tomorrow, and then everything, like, it started going live one by one. And I think so, although the process seemed similarly overloaded this morning, from an outside perspective, it looked a lot less confusing because it was just sort of like people were getting them or they weren't, and everyone knew sort of what to expect going into it. And that, I think, at least made it seem calmer. But also, I was trying to get a PS5 and I wasn't trying to get this, so I don't
know. Josh, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, as a spectator, that's what it seemed like to me. During the PS5 pre-order, I got added to a channel for everybody to try and match their information and collaborate and try to get pre-orders together. And I did not ask to be in that channel, but I was put in there anyway. I was in there without my consent, but I saw everything happen and I was like, wow, this looks crazy. Because I mean, what Tom said, yeah, like we didn't know that they were gonna be live. And so retailers just started doing it. And so a lot of like half the conversation is like, okay, well, who is doing it? And with Xbox, like, okay, we know all these retailers, we know what time it is. And so there was still like, shortage of stock or whatever. But it seemed a lot less chaotic.
Okay, so I have a poor memory apparently, and I don't really remember what the PS4 and Xbox One pre-order situation was like. I don't know. Do any of you remember if it was this wild?
Well, there were certain differences when you go back 7 years, right? Like there's certain differences in just like how people buy stuff. Like a lot of this chaos. Oh, there is a siren going outside my house. A lot of this chaos. Yeah, it's fitting. Instead of just being like everyone concentrated online at home, was spread out over physical retailers and midnight launches and lining up. Like I remember lining up for the Switch. I remember lining up for the Wii. I think probably the Wii U was a little bit calmer, but that's an exception to the rule a little bit. So yeah, it's like, I think it's always been this hard to get consoles at launch. It's just sort of been in different ways in the past. That's my recollection, at least.
I feel like that
sounds about right.
That makes sense. Go ahead, Josh.
No, that sounds about right. Everything seems like a lot more online these days. I think people are more like plugged into Twitter and trying to like share information as quick as possible. And
I mean, there's an argument to be made of like, I'd much rather be sitting at my computer for an hour and a half trying to get into websites and then know I didn't get one than I would like sleeping outside of Best Buy
Yeah.
from midnight until 6 a.m. when they open, and then finding out that I'm 70th in line and they only had 60 consoles, right? Like it's two
Oh,
different evils, but
heartbreaking.
I
Has that
actually
happened
did.
to anybody?
No, I camped out overnight completely for a Wii, and I was like 66th in line, and they had
That's
90
wild.
of them. So yeah,
Dang.
Yeah,
I have done that, but I didn't get burned by it.
I've never. Did you? Okay, here's a question. Did you already have the things you needed to camp, or did you go on a camping? Did you buy camping stuff to buy the Wii?
We didn't. We just brought chairs. We just brought like
We
fold-out
just
chairs.
bought chairs.
All
Oh
right.
yeah, I see what you did there.
All right.
That's very cute.
Thank you.
I've
But
never
I
done an
needed it.
overnight thing for it, but I did wait. Did I wait in line? I don't think I really waited in line for the Switch. I was actually very worried about how the Switch would do because it was coming off the Wii U. The Wii U obviously didn't do well. And I like rushed, like they did their presentation. They're like, tomorrow there's gonna be like Switches that you can pre-order or something like that. So we rushed to different stores that next morning. And it was a little bit too easy to get the pre-order, and we're like, huh, I hope this console does well, but we'll have ours either way. And then that was basically the experience. And the only part that I had to line up for, I think I lined up a little bit for the Switch, but it was like, 10 minutes before the store opened or something, pretty mild. And then to actually pick it up, you did have to come back. Like our GameStop did a thing where you came back at a certain time, like 9 or something at night, or like earlier, and you got a ticket for like your number, and then you like lined up, and they only gave out so many or something like that to
Right.
like pick it up or something weird like that. Like you had to get it kind of pre-approved, but it wasn't like a overnight situation. And I remember for today, I'm like, as soon as I got on my computer, I'm like, maybe I should just got it in real life. But the issue was like, I heard a lot, we did a story on how GameStop was said to have even more limited amounts of consoles. I think too, this is the first gen where at launch there is a diskless model, which is inherently not something that's favored by any retailers because they're not going to make any money selling that product. I think that also kind of drove down that, and then combined with COVID, just sort of drove down the desire to do the lineup thing. Like, I'm going to have to wait how many hours to maybe still not even get a console versus just going online and trying and tabbing out and just trying to run multiple things that way. Yeah, and then it's a weird time too because it's like this could be one of the last physical gens we even have of consoles. Like with the way things are moving, we don't really know what that next gen looks like. So I'm like, I'm definitely going to be here for like what could be the last gen or the second to last gen at launch. I'm like, this might not be happening again. Like, E3 may never come back. Like the world is very finite in its thing. So I'm not going to miss this to like wait and get it later. Like I got to be in now.
Yeah, I am really hoping because I know last gen, when the Xbox One, now my brain, we'll get to that in a second. My brain's getting all confused because the names are so similar. When the Xbox One came out and they printed Day One edition on the controls, it was very cute. It was very nice, and then it broke very quickly. Well, not quickly, but quicker than my brother's console, which was not Day One. Anyways, I hope that they do something cute like that so that I can tell which controller came with the thing. It was cute. Anyways, speaking of Xbox Series X and Xbox One X, and all of these names are kind of similar. Don't know why they did that to us. Specifically, don't know why they did that to the poor people who accidentally bought Xbox One X's maybe today because we saw Xbox One X sales spike on this Series X pre-order day. So according to Amazon's sales rank on our own IGN deals data, there was a noticeable bump in Xbox One X purchases today. And Amazon says there was a 707. Oh my gosh, my brain just stopped working. How do I say this number?
747.
I was trying to say it how, like, you say thousands, how it's like 1,000 and so it's like 7 and 47. Like, that doesn't sound correct. I don't, the stress, the anxiety of trying to get an Xbox One X or Xbox Series X today is just making my brain melt. But yeah, there was a 747% jump in sales for the Xbox One X. And our data actually shows that there were twice as many Xbox One X's sold today than in the past 60 days. I'm not sure if that's the past 60 days combined or what. But important to note, there were 0 PS4 sales on the day the PS5 pre-orders went live. So we do, obviously we don't know if those purchases were on purpose. We don't know if it was human error or poorly optimized auto purchasing bots, which if it was the latter, I think that's very funny. Because don't use bots, it's rude. And I feel like most of the time when people use bots, it's to resale it at a much higher price. But Janet, were you close to accidentally buying an Xbox One X, or were you just smooth sailing?
I was fine, but as soon as we started talking about this, like before, we went live here, I felt like the need to check it, the need to really make sure,
Just in
because
case.
they sound very similar. And even like Googling it now, like if you look up Xbox One X, it auto generates pre-order, but that doesn't make any sense. So yeah, I think it does help that, and this is probably one of the reasons, besides the fact that it's like competing with yourself, that Microsoft is no longer really making or pushing out the One X to try to get out of its own way. But it's still very weird. And it's, even going to like the Microsoft store, if you look up the One X, it auto goes to just the 3 models, which they have: the Series X, the Series S, and the One S. But even just looking at the One S by the Series S, it's just odd because they're the same price point. They look very similar. It's just a weird time. So yeah, hopefully no one bought that by accident, or maybe they just said, forget it, I want something new today. Like, you ever go to like when I go Black Friday shopping, like I just go during the normal part of the day and I just buy something. I'm the same way at the conventions. Like, I'll buy something just to feel like we're here, it's like the thing to do. Like, it's not even a good deal, but you just want to walk away with something.
Be
Maybe
part
a
of the
few people fell
culture.
into that category. Yes, just like I want to feel like I was here today and that I did a thing and that this is now, it's an event. Um, yeah, that's an unfortunate circumstance, but also like it just brings me like flashbacks to my childhood and trying to get like non-gaming adults, especially, any of us who grew up, no matter how young you may be, gaming still wasn't nearly as big as it was when you were a kid because it's a very new medium. You know, like begging, like, hey, I'm writing it down. This is the thing to get. Super Mario 64, not Mario Party, not just this. It's gonna look like this. You have pictures, from the magazine, and then they come back and they're like, "Hey, I got you like this random thing that the person selling stuff who also doesn't know anything about games told me to get." And you're like, "Well, you can't win it all, but like to take an L like that on hardware is I can't even imagine."
Oh
Yeah.
man, yeah, that's
So
heartbreaking.
I think the naming convention is stupid and confusing. I think that this was a bad thing for them to do. Like, fundamentally, I think it was a mistake for them to name their 2 different styles X and S. Like, even just that, I think, was a bad idea, right? But, however, just to be the devil's advocate of the room, our very own Seth Macy was tweeting about this. He's in charge of IGN Deal's Twitter account. He lives and breathes Amazon and all this stuff. And I would be remiss if I didn't point out some of the things that he was saying about all this and the spike, which is a 747% increase or whatever it was of like basically nothing is not a huge amount, right? Like, this isn't, it's not like people were, wasn't some mass sale, right? We do know that today Xbox One X sales spiked, but it was a like compared to what what has been, that percentage increase like wasn't that large. Like, I think he tweeted out that the Xbox One X still hasn't even broken the top 50 best-selling Xbox items on Amazon today. So like that includes like controllers and peripherals and all those other things. Like, Xbox-based keyboards are selling better than the One X, right? Like, it's not like this is a pandemic of people confusing this. So it could be a little overblown in that regard, but also it is hard. Like, it is true that he was also saying that like for example, the One X has been out of stock in a lot of places for a long time and was not today. So like, there could have been people waiting to buy it today, right? Like, there's a lot of ways to explain this beyond just like people outright confused the name. But I personally would speculate that that is absolutely part of some of those sales.
So, Josh, what would you rename the Xbox Series X and Xbox Series S to make it less confusing?
Oh man, that's I don't know. It's a good question. maybe start going colors. No, that
I was always a
Scarlet.
fan of the Xbox Two.
because I was thinking yeah. Well, they clearly ever since Xbox since Xbox One, they clearly like threw out normal number conventions out the window.
I mean, even
They went from
360,
360 to 1, so that they don't care about that. I'm trying to think of like, because like how Pokemon does it, they go by colors, and then
Oh,
they
yeah.
started doing letters. So
Xbox
maybe something
Diamond
like that.
Pearl.
Yeah, that'd be cool. I mean, and
I
if you
was
do it by
Diamond
colors
and
as
Pearl.
well, like you could like not mistake it for anything else. You look at it, it's like, oh, I got the Xbox white. Okay, got it.
Are they the same color as the name? So the generation
They
Xbox.
would all, if they weren't, that would be a
How
total.
upsetting would that be if it was like the Xbox purple and all of their consoles were like white?
Yeah.
Yeah, but then what happens again? Like the way I think about it is the parent walking into Target and asking for the thing, right? And like
Right.
if they walked in and they went, "I'd like the white Xbox, please." Like
Yes.
there's so many options. So like
Yes.
what is
You tie the color to the console, and that's what they did here. The One
Got it.
X is black, or sorry, the Series X is
See,
black,
it's
and the
confusing.
Series S is white.
You know, it's
There's-
funny what you mentioned about color too, because like I think a lot of things do end up boiling down to that. I did work at GameStop. I think maybe like only like 2 or 3 years ago. At one holiday season, I was a seasonal worker at GameStop. That was an experience. And one of the things that I would do is like when someone was coming in for something that was both like a PlayStation and Microsoft thing, but they didn't remember what their like kid had. I'm like, is it the blue one or is it the green one? And I like use that, and that they always knew that answer because like, oh yeah, like it just kind of even in the logos and the boxes and all that, I think it does end up boiling down to that for a lot of people. But yeah, for names, I really liked. I get kind of attached sometimes to the behind the scenes names that they had. Like I thought Xbox Scarlet was so cool, and I thought would have been really awesome if they incorporated like an element of that coloring in. I guess it wouldn't make sense because they're so like green and black and white heavy in their stuff. But yeah, I really liked that as like a thing. I think one challenge they had is they already have so many other things with like their services like Game Pass and Game Pass Ultimate. Like you couldn't really call it Xbox Ultimate because that conflicts with Game Pass Ultimate. And then I think one of my ideas at one point was Xbox Infinity, but that sounds so stupid. It sounds like Dunder Mifflin Infinity. It's just bad. But something that kind of what I was kind of hoping they'd come up with this gen was something that spoke to what their like mission statement was, right? PlayStation was leading with this idea of the gen, even though they kind of backed away from that now. But they have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like this is how it goes. We're just going. That's it. That's us. But Xbox is kind of going for this idea of cross-generational, play anywhere, and I would have been nice if there was a name that reflected that. I feel like Series X and Series S doesn't reflect that mission to me, and that's what's most disappointing in the name. Besides the fact that S and X are very hard to say differently, and it's got like this weird like typos to make stuff awkward leaning into it. It's just bad. It's just a bad name.
Xbox forever.
There's even like an Xbox article where
Right?
they didn't even
Like
write
Duke
it
Nukem
correctly.
style.
Xbox forever. Yeah, they wrote like Xbox One Series X in some sort of press release somewhere. It's pretty.
But that doesn't sound that off. That's the
Xbox
problem.
One Series X. I know, like
Like, it
it's like
could
the
be a
special.
thing.
It's
What
weird.
honestly though, if they would have made the new generation Xbox One Series X still confusing, but then at least you have the right one if it has the extra word. Like
Yes.
newer gen, more words. That feels less confusing than what we're currently sitting at. But
There's a
Oh,
tweet
go
I
ahead.
saw somebody who did actually like we're talking about maybe not that many people ordered the wrong one, but there's a tweet I saw somebody screenshotted this guy who submitted his screenshot of his order confirmation to a Facebook group for NBA 2K. And he's like, new Xbox secured. And he's like kind of giving people crap for not being able to afford an Xbox, but it says Xbox One S series, or sorry, Xbox One S white. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, oh, that's the Xbox Series S. And I'm like, oh, no, it's the One S. And I could see
Well,
why he would get confused, but also he's kind of the dick about
I
it.
was
So
gonna say, that's what you get
kind
for
of
being
deserves it.
I don't know. Today's branded. I don't know if I can cuss. Anyways, moving right along. If you couldn't get an Xbox, then maybe you want to pre-order Marvel's Spider-Man Miles Morales, because it's up for pre-order, except that's on a different console. So maybe I'm assuming that you have both an Xbox and a PlayStation in this scenario. But it releases on PS4 and PS5 November 12th, and it takes place a year after the events of the original game. We got some good showcase of gameplay, which we're actually watching right now. Well, this isn't gameplay, but eventually there's gameplay at the PS5 showcase, which I think was last week. And there are 2 editions. There's a standard edition, which is $49.99, Ultimate Edition $69.99. Nice. And that includes a remaster of the original game for PS5. So anyone who buys the game on PS4 gets a free PS5 upgrade if you buy a PS5 console. Now here's where the controversy lies, which is the Marvel's Spider-Man, the base game, PS4 save files won't work with the PS5 remaster. Insomniac Games revealed the news on Twitter by responding to somebody, which I think is very funny when publishers or your developers break news like that by just like responding to someone who asks a question. But what do you guys think of this? Is this upsetting? I have my own opinion on it, whether or not it's upsetting or disappointing, or if the disappointment is merited. But Josh, I saw you kind of nod your head. How are you feeling?
I like how it's $50 for one, just for Miles Morales. Like it's not even $60, which is cool. So I mean, it affirms my belief that it's not a full not gonna be as big of a game as the original Spider-Man. I'm disappointed about the save files not carrying over. There are a lot of comments on our social pages from people that are like, I don't care, like I'm gonna go beat it for a 4th or 5th time anyway. And I'm like, that's cool, but like I feel like a lot of people like myself, put a lot of hours into beating the game. I love the game. I don't love it that much to like spend another big chunk of hours beating it again, especially since I got all the collectibles. I think the main reason why people who already played the original one would want to get it on PS5 is just kind of like play as Peter Parker on the PS5. I mean, that's the only reason I would get the original Spider-Man for PS5. And if I have to start from hour 0 in that game, I'm gonna be like, all right, I gotta like do all this other stuff, I guess, and I'll probably like lose steam. So if I do get this game, I'll probably stick to just the Miles Morales edition, standard edition.
Janice, what's your take on
Janice?
I told you my brain.
There's only one Janet here. Singular.
Well, I don't even think I know a Janice. Janet, I'm so sorry. What is your take on the fact that the PS4 save files won't work with the PS5 remaster? Do you think? I mean, I don't know the technicalities between if it's that easy as like putting a little elbow grease and making it happen, or I don't know.
Blow into it, and then it'll just work. I mean, it's not ideal. I think the whole situation is kind of awkward, to be honest. It's just sort of this weird. I don't know. You can buy it again, sort of, but we bundle it, so you don't really have to buy it again. But you kind of have to. We're making you buy it again by not having you buy it again, but making you buy a more expensive version of a thing that we made cheaper. There's a lot going on with that. Personally, I'm not looking to play. I don't really replay games that often. There's only a set number of games that like I will replay them a bunch of times, but that number is pretty small and does not include Spider-Man for PS4. It just doesn't. So this doesn't really affect me, but it would have been a nice thing to, especially with all the DLC they had and like the 8 million backpacks they put across New York City. Like it would have been kind of nice to be able to carry that over. I also like the $50 price point. Makes me feel like I'm very nostalgic for the GameCube era, and I feel like this was that time when games were $50. So that part's cool. I am kind of embarrassed hype-wise to say that I already pre-ordered this like the day I got my PS5. I've had it for like a really long time. I just tossed in the pre-order at Walmart with everything else. For PS5 specifically. Though I was also worried that I'm like, shoot, did I get the PS5 version or the PS4? But now there is no PS4 physical, so it couldn't have been the PS4 version. I'm not a huge fan of it not having a physical release either, just because every time a AAA game says we're not doing a physical release at launch, it makes me, I just see the death of physical media happening more and more piece by piece. And even though I know it's inevitable, like I don't like seeing it because I'm like bummed for it. So anything that is an indicator towards that just bums the hell out of me.
It's good for the environment though.
Yeah, but like,
I know.
I'm gonna be
it's
honest.
sad.
I don't care. Maybe that makes me a bad person, but like we ruin the environment in a lot of ways. That's not gonna. If you're trying to reach the environmentalist of me, like outside of wanting an electric car, like this isn't gonna be.
That's
This
not
isn't
it.
gonna be the place to be.
Tom, are you? I know you're PC or die. Maybe that's not true. In my head, you're just like the PC man. But are you
Die.
pre-ordering Spider-Man?
No, I'm not. I don't pre-order any game ever, basically, because I think it is. I don't care about physical media, and to me, that would be the only reason ever to pre-order is to make sure you get that physical. Like, if you're buying games digitally, I think there's literally zero reason to pre-order a game aside from like if it's got really cool pre-order bonuses that you just can't do without, right? But I think this save file thing is whack. Like just super stupid. I don't ever want to diminish how much work something in a game or game development is, because the thing I've consistently heard from developers is that games are insanely hard to make and by all accounts should not be possible to make because they are so difficult, which is why you get a lot of bad games. And I don't want to belittle that at all, but it is hard to understand something like the save files not transferring here when you also look at things like Divinity Original Sin 2 and eventually Hades, which will have your save files transfer from PC to Switch. So like if that sort of thing is going on, it just doesn't make sense to me why PS4 to PS5 wouldn't, right? Like it feels like we've seen enough other kind of places have starting to do cross progression and starting to do cross play and cross saves that I don't like. This feels very unexpectedly like restrictive to me, and I don't get it. Basically, like I'm not saying that they should just do it. It would be easy. They're being lazy for not doing it. It's just like I feel like there is something going on here that is confusing why they would not make this work given what else we've seen in the industry. And it should. It just is like such a simple thing. It's not going to break the game for a lot of people. It's probably only going to really negatively impact a like not a huge chunk of people, but it's still just like one of those things where it's like why is that not a thing? It just confuses me.
Yeah, in the words of Michael Scott, why are you the way that you are? So to play devil's advocate, which I now feel stupid because I completely agree. After unpacking this more than when I unpacked it and wrote the Daily Fix script. So if you have to watch the Daily Fix later today, know that this is my updated opinion. But when I wrote it, I was thinking about how, okay, like remasters, this is how I rationalized it, was like remasters, you know, Super Mario 3D All-Stars just came out, it's a remaster. And I wouldn't expect my save from like Super Mario Sunshine to work on Super Mario 3D All-Stars. Like typically when there's a remaster, I'm not expecting to be able to go and play my old save files from whenever the original game came out. However, that's usually because there's been multiple generations between and there's been a lot of time where you might not even have the save files anymore. And so it becomes a little bit more believable. But once you brought up the cross-generational stuff and the fact that so many games have cross-generational support in terms of progress, it becomes a little bit more unbelievable to me that that isn't something that they maybe strive for more, especially because I feel like everyone was so obsessed with their suits. And I feel like people
Right.
worked really hard to get those.
Well, and your point totally stands, right? Like this, it's probably not a trivial thing. It definitely wouldn't make sense in past generations, but this gen Switch is so weird because the line is so blurred, where you're like paying for some upgrades, right? Some games are just like, yeah, if you own this game on PS4, then when you play it on PS5, it'll just be running better. You know, it'll just work. Fortnite, you know, you're not gonna have to like pay for some upgrade to your Fortnite game to get a better Fortnite on PS5. But then other games, you have to buy like this, you have to buy the deluxe edition of this other game to even get access to this game. Or other games like Control, you have to buy a completely different version for that. Where then other games, still are just doing patches where they're like, hey, you know what, we're just going to upgrade this if you already have this system. And so it's this really messy time, and the rules haven't been set yet, and people don't know what to expect yet. And that causes moments of confusion like this, where it's just like, oh, why is that? Okay, that's not a thing. That's weird. And it's not like the end of the world. It's just like, we don't know what is or isn't following what set of rules yet. And it just is a little tiring.
Here's a question.
Confusing.
What do you guys think will emerge as the gold standard when like the dust settles? I know it's like 3 metaphors in one sentence, but like what will be the standard practice, do you think?
Whatever makes the company money.
See, I kind of disagree with that, because I do think there is a line where, and I guess that does kind of go back to money, because if consumers are unhappy and don't buy it, then they can't get away with doing it. But it's definitely like over the course of the years in these different generations, we've seen a little bit about what companies want to do, and then what they like decide, never mind, the world's not ready for this, let's go back. I mean, I think Microsoft is like the best example of that, with like being always online. They're like, we're all moving online, right? We love online. And everyone's like, we hate online. We want our discs. And now people are like trying so hard to get the discless PS5. Like it's wild how times change. So it'll be interesting to see what ends up. I'm guessing that like free upgrades will become standard practice, just because I do think as we move away from physical media, like the idea of selling a digital deluxe edition, I mean, I know you can, but I just feel like that's a little bit more of like a physical angle. Like they often have those stupid metal cases that I don't know who actually likes those, but I have like a bunch of them for some reason, because they always come in a metal case. That's the indestructible physical disc. Yeah, so I feel like it's going to be harder to sell that as we move away from physical as well, because that's sort of like one of the reasons to get something like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's smart delivery. I know that I feel like we haven't heard very much about it since they announced it a little bit ago, but at the time, they made it sound like it was going to be this thing that all these developers were going to buy into, and there were going to be so many options, and you're going to get these free upgrades. I'm curious if it's just going to dissipate. I feel like Cyberpunk is the last one that I remember seeing a headline in terms of like CD Projekt Red committing to that. But I don't know. I mean, I would hope. That's obviously very pro-consumer. But going back to what Tom said, I do, and what Janice, just kidding, that's not your name. I'm not going to call you Janice. That's like so rude to call people by not their name. That's a whole other tangent, but that was not a funny joke. Anyways, but going back to what you both were saying, I think, it'll come down to, are they losing too much money doing that? Does it make financial sense?
Well, and it'll also come down to what we've seen be a big player in company decisions in the last couple of years, which is like user outcry, right? Like Remedy got pretty grilled for that control thing. And if people, I'm not a fan of like weaponizing fan bases or anything like that, but at the same time, if people are voice their like anger about kind of these piecemeal upgrades that you have to pay for, I think that the community, like we've seen, microtransactions have completely changed in the last couple of years because of outcry from players. So I think that there is hope that if people are just sort of like don't put up with it, they might go more towards that smart delivery, free upgrade stuff. And Janet, I think that's what I'd like to see happen for sure. But maybe I'm a cynic at this point.
Alrighty, well, I think that wraps up this show today. So thank you everyone for tuning in. Thank you, Janet. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Josh. And I guess thank you, me. And we'll see you all tomorrow, same time, same place, 4 p.m. Pacific. Have a nice Tuesday, day, and more.
Yes, it's Tuesday.
Play on our name.